Welcome back to Chapter 12. We've seen the government control prices directly with ceilings and floors. Now we study a subtler tool, a tax on a good. A tax doesn't fix the price, but it splits it into two different prices, and that's the key idea of this lesson. Ceilings and floors fix the price by law. A tax works completely differently. It leaves the market to find its own price, but it inserts a gap between what the buyer pays and what the seller keeps. We'll study a per unit tax. That's a fixed amount, call it T, that the producer must pay the government on each unit sold. Sell one more unit, or one more T. How do producers experience this tax? From their point of view, it's just like a rise in their costs. Every unit now costs T more to bring to market than it did before. And we know what higher costs do to supply. They shift the supply curve up and to the left. Here, the shift is by exactly the size of the tax. The new supply curve is the old 1 plus T. Here it is on the graph. The original supply is faded, and the new supply, labeled S plus T, sits above it, shifted up by the height of the tax at every quantity. The market now finds a new equilibrium. It moves from the old crossing, which we'll call point A, to a new crossing, point B, where demand meets the new supply curve, S plus T. At point B, the market price is higher than before. This higher price is what the consumer actually pays at the till. We'll call it PC, the consumer price. But here's the twist. The producer doesn't get to keep that whole price. Out of the PC that the consumer pays, the producer has to hand the tax T over to the government. What's left is the producer price, PP. So we get the key relationship of the whole lesson. The consumer price minus the tax equals the producer price. PC minus T equals PP, one payment by the buyer, split into two parts. Let's see both prices on one graph. At the new quantity, the consumer price PC sits up on the demand curve. Directly below it, on the original supply curve, sits the producer price PP. The red gap between them is the tax, T. Notice also what happened to the quantity. At the new equilibrium, the quantity traded has dropped to Q1, below the old level. By raising the effective price, the tax shrinks the size of the market. And both sides of the market are hurt. Consumers pay a higher price and buy less than before. Producers sell a smaller quantity, and they keep less per unit after handing over the tax. Nobody on either side is happy. Now, what does the government get? On every unit that's sold, it collects the tax T. So its total revenue is simply the tax times the quantity sold, T times Q1. On the graph, that revenue is a rectangle. Its height is the tax, the gap from PP up to PC. Its width is the quantity Q1. The area of that rectangle is exactly the government's revenue from the tax. Let's make it concrete with cigarettes. Suppose a pack sells for 10 shekels, and there's a tax of 1 shekel per pack. The consumer pays 10, the producer keeps 9, and the government collects 1 shekel on every pack. And the government's total revenue is just that 1 shekel times the number of packs sold. Multiply the per unit tax by the quantity, and you have the whole take from the tax. What if the government removes a tax? Then the logic runs in reverse. The supply curve shifts back to the right, the price falls, and the quantity rises again. Scrapping a tax is just a supply increase. Now here's the question a finance ministry really cares about. When does a tax raise the most money? The surprising answer depends entirely on the elasticity of demand. With ordinary demand that responds to price, the tax pushes the price up and the quantity falls noticeably. And since fewer units are sold, the government collects the tax on fewer units, so revenue is eaten away. But now imagine demand is perfectly inelastic, a vertical line. Buyers take exactly the same quantity no matter what the price is. They simply will not cut back. Look what happens. The supply shifts up by the tax, the price rises by the full amount, but the quantity doesn't fall at all. The vertical demand curve holds the quantity fixed. And because the quantity is unchanged, the government's revenue isn't reduced one bit. It collects the full tax on the full quantity. Revenue is as large as it possibly can be. So here's the rule. The more inelastic the demand for a good, the more revenue a tax on it raises. The reason is simple. When demand is inelastic, the quantity barely falls, so the government keeps collecting on nearly every unit. This is why governments love to tax goods with inelastic demand: cigarettes, alcohol, and fuel. Buyers keep buying them despite the higher price, so the tax sticks, and the revenue holds up year after year. There's often a double motive too. Taxing cigarettes also discourages a harmful product, though only a little, precisely because demand is inelastic, while still raising a steady stream of revenue. The government gets both effects. One more idea: who actually bears the tax? The side of the market that's less able to walk away, the more inelastic side, ends up paying the larger share. Inflexible buyers, or inflexible sellers, get stuck with more of the burden. Let's state the mechanism in brief. A per-unit tax T shifts supply left to S plus T. The consumer price PC rises and the quantity falls. The producer price is PC minus T, and the government's revenue is T times the quantity. Let's put real numbers on a tax, so you can find both prices and the revenue. Here's the setup. The market starts in equilibrium at a price of 8 shekels and a quantity of 100. Then the government adds a tax of 2 shekels on every unit the producer sells. From the producer's side, that's a 2 shekel rise in cost per unit. So the supply curve shifts up to S plus 2. Producers now need 2 shekels more than before to supply any given quantity. Solving for the new equilibrium, the consumer price rises to 9 shekels, and the quantity falls from 100 to 80. The tax has pushed the price up and shrunk the market, just as the theory said. Now the producer price. The producer collects 9 shekels from the consumer but hands 2 to the government. So the producer keeps 9 minus 2, which is 7 shekels per unit. That's PP equals PC minus T. And the government's revenue is the tax times the quantity sold. 2 shekels times 80 units, which is 160 shekels. That's the rectangle we drew earlier, turned into a number. Notice how the burden split. The consumer price rose by 1 shekel, from 8 to 9. The producer price fell by 1 shekel, from 8 to 7. So the 2 shekel tax was shared evenly between the two sides in this example. Let's summarize. A per-unit tax shifts supply to the left by the size of the tax. The consumer pays PC, while the producer keeps PP, which is PC minus T. The quantity falls, and both sides are worse off. The revenue is T times the quantity, and it's largest when demand is inelastic. The one line to remember: a tax drives a wedge between the consumer's price and the producer's price, and it shrinks the quantity traded. In our final lesson, we flip the tax around. A subsidy is a tax in reverse. The government pays producers instead of collecting from them. We'll see how that lowers the consumer price and raises the quantity. That's lesson 12.4. And keep this relationship handy for any tax problem. PC minus T equals PP. Always pin down the two prices and the new quantity, and the rest follows. Here's the exam tip. Draw the new supply curve, S plus T. Mark the consumer price PC up on the demand curve, and the producer price PP directly below it. The tax is simply the vertical gap between those 2 points. If this lesson helped, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share it with someone who's studying economics. And to keep getting extra materials, join our members club, where you'll find the full quiz library, fully worked solutions, and more practice questions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.